spoke for and against what they should do next. And at that meeting, it was voted on a 4-3 decision to proceed back to referendum, and let's look at a new building, and let's give those taxpayers that choice. So that's what brought us to this point in time. A unique way of getting here, but that's why we're here, and that's why we're still here. In a couple weeks, you'll be going to the polls to vote, and you'll be informing the school board what they need to do next. The November referendum was an addition. Basically, right out these doors, based on the design that FEH had put together. 3 classrooms for the kindergarten level, a new gymnasium, which is a classroom from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. It's a classroom. Our current gymnasium is a lunchroom for a large portion of the day, so classes can't take place there, especially when it's this kind of weather yet. So addition there. Upstairs, they would have offices, and the main entrance would move from Cawthorn Street out here to the parking lot. That's kind of this layout that FEH had put together for referendum. 11.92 is this project. Okay. So, advantages, the community, the surveys, the elementary school planning committee met, presented to the school board throughout the process, made their ultimate recommendation. That's what came forward in the November referendum. Disadvantages, you probably heard multiple times. Nobody knows for sure what it's going to take to fix the foundation of this building. If you walk down this hallway towards the main entrance, you can't help but notice the crowning in the floor. If you look into a couple of classrooms, there is a metal plate that helps transition from the hallway into those classrooms. The belief is that it's a water issue running underneath the building, coming off the hillside. It's either been a compaction of some clay, erosion of clay, but until there's the ability to pull a tile in the classrooms and drill a hole in the floor to see what's down there, no one's sure. FEH wasn't sure. HSR isn't 100% positive what it's going to entail to fix that. They give us their best estimates based on what they're looking at right now. One campus. Why one united campus? If you remember, back in the spring, it was called a charrette, a word I hadn't known until I'd gone through this whole process, but allowed people to come in and look at the different designs. Everybody was given several stickers. They could cast a vote on what they liked. Some of the designs had an addition attached to the high school building. Some of them were a separate building at that location. Some of them were an addition out this direction, out to the south of the building. It was just multiple designs. And as they went through this, here's what the community had said. But there are some opportunities that the school board feels can be gained by making this a one site or one campus location. Not that it isn't going to continue, but the ability to interact between high school students and elementary students. And I know sometimes that's a concept that strikes fear into a parent's heart, and I chuckle because if you were anything like me, the last thing I used to say to my son was, "You will drop your sister off at school, or I will keep the car keys, and you can get the bus to school if you'd like." You probably have older sons and daughters dropping off younger sons and daughters, so that intermingling and those nasty high school students, we have a great opportunity. We use the Oak Savannah. The FFA classes come down here and work with elementary students. Just last week, the third graders came up and worked with Mr. Robinson in the greenhouse. Those are opportunities that won't go away no matter what. No matter what the vote in April, those opportunities won't go away. If we're on one campus, maybe those opportunities are a little bit easier. Because of the design and the layout, which we'll get to, that certainly improves that opportunity for that to happen on a little more regular basis. None of the needs, none of the concerns have gone. The concerns of safety, the concerns of keeping car traffic and bus traffic and walking traffic separate, none of those are going away. And you would see when we get to it that those things are being designed into the potential solution of putting everything on one campus. We have, and I'll just put this up for the time being, and then we'll also be up on the board, on the screen for everybody to see. But the 4-lane highway goes by, and at the high school, middle school building, we have what's called dark fiber. A couple summers ago, we tapped into fiber optics line right off the highway, and we get our internet right off of that line. So we have a very fast, reliable internet connection at the high school building. At this location, we get our internet in this building through Charter. The cost down here is a couple $1,000s more than what we pay on a year. We had a company, Dr. Francois had a company come in, and the gentleman came back this summer and looked at what would it take to run that fiber from our building down to this building. And it would entail going underground. It would be some properties all the way around. It would be trying to tap into some of the power poles. And if anybody works for Alliant or used to work for Alliant, you can probably speak better to this than I can, but it's my understanding there aren't very many power poles in the city of Mineral Point that have space available. Plus, when you get on those poles, you pay a little rent for using those poles. But the cost to get that fiber down here is a couple $100,000. If it's one location at the high school, obviously we're just coming through our own yard, and that's going to be a drastically lesser amount of money for us to spend to get both locations, both buildings, that same internet connection. And in this day and age, a lot of things are, internet web-based, so that would be a plus on that one location. What's coming? April 2nd. I urge you to vote. And I really don't care what your vote is, but please vote. Please get out and vote. The question will be asking for permission to issue bond or issue debt not to exceed $19.5 million for building, outfitting a new elementary building located on school property. The school property in question is up at that middle school, high school location. So basically we're asking you for permission to borrow up to and no more than $19,500,000. What's the tax impact? For $19,500,000, the tax impact on the mill rate for a $100,000 home would be $2.71. The city of Mineral Point has already given the school district the authority, and the mill rate will be going up next year. If we're doing the addition remodel, the mill rate's going up. You've given us the authority to borrow $350,000 a year in an operating referendum. So this year, the mill rate is $11.33. Thankfully, it came down to that based on everything that I was being told, based on the property valuations. The mill rate came down, and your current mill rate for your school property taxes was $11.33. If you heard me speak before the November election, you would have heard me say, what the school gets is coming down. Your property taxes will be going up, just like mine did. my property taxes went up, but it was not because of what the school was charging me. Now, the beauty of the city, the county, and the technical college is that they all know exactly where you're going to have the most anger and the direction you're going to shoot that anger. And that's at me, at the school. It's the school's fault. But if you go back and look at your property tax bills, you'll see that the mill rate decreased for the school. But everybody else out there loves to let you think it's the school's fault. So, if we're building an addition remodel down here, that mill rate plus the operating referendum will take that $11.33 and we'll make it $13.85. That's the school's portion of the mill rate. Now, I need to also say this. Some of this will depend on what happens to the property values. If there's more property added, if a business were to come in and start up, that might change the property values. And that might change the mill rate. But by all projections, next year the mill rate will be $13.85 for the addition, remodel, and operating referendum. So what impact will the 19.5 have? With the operating referendum and the $19.5 million question, the mill rate will be $14.78. Again, that's based on 20 years. You're borrowing the money for 20 years. It's a house payment for 20 years. Based on the property valuations staying as they are, $14.78. And this is why people kept coming to school board members and saying, I don't know that I want my money to be spent here. I think my money might be spent better at the other location. A difference of 93 cents in this mill rate for addition, remodel, or a new school. Again, the needs haven't changed. We want safety. We want parent drop-off, bus drop-off. We want those separate so kids can be safe coming in and out of the building. We want to make sure that we're ADA compliant. We want to get the building up to code. A new building will have all of those things built into it. So none of the needs have changed between why we were in October, November asking for you to vote and why we're back here in April. Those needs have not changed. Solutions. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to Brad Simonson from HSR to kind of help talk about some of the solutions and what's being designed or built in.
Okay. Again, the school board asked us to take a look at what a new building would entail, where it might go, how it might fit on the site. And keep in mind, these are very conceptual drawings. We didn't look at a lot of different opportunities or solutions, but we kind of hit on one that we felt was very logical, made a lot of sense in terms of how it works with the existing building, how it works with existing traffic flow. And with that, we kind of came to the idea that it would be a nice piece to bring it to the south of the existing structure. That would allow us to, again, Mitch talked about safety and security. That would allow us to, I think, help simplify and maybe clean up some of that traffic that's there now. Even with one building, it seems somewhat chaotic, challenging. So I think what we're thinking of doing is trying to combine a car drop-off area in between the two buildings with this piece, along with some additional parking. Create a separate bus area that there's land that connects the street that comes into town down here that we could, I think, access. So we have a simple point of entry for the buses. And that would clean this whole traffic flow up quite a bit, we think. Putting the building on the slope utilizing the slope to our advantage with a two-story structure where all the classrooms have tremendous exposure on the southern part of the site, towards the southern part. We're also obviously creating outdoor play spaces for those kids, smaller kids, bigger kids. We are able to utilize this hard surface bus area where the buses are there in the morning and in the evening or afternoon. We can gate this off, where the gate might be is maybe here or who knows where. But we can gate that off and get a lot of double use out of that space, a lot of good use out of that hard surface area, and use it for play, or hard surface play area as well. Again, very, very conceptual ideas, and if this passes, you know, we'd love to have a lot more conversations with all of you guys to help us really hone in on what's really appropriate design. So I guess with that, we can have a lot more questions, I'm sure, about this.
So, looking at the pullouts here, Brad, do you want to
Sure.
kind of talk about your project?
Yep, again, we've done a very big overview, conceptual cost estimate. We break it down into site development. We see that at about $2.3 million on the site. Again, we want to utilize the site to our advantage. It's a nice slope there, we want to take advantage of that. We know that there's probably some bedrock in the area, we've done a lot of projects in the area, but that's not insurmountable. The new elementary building itself, we're seeing that as at about 72,000 square feet of space. And we see that includes, you know, administration, classrooms, all of the core areas, library, some of those things, which we typically try to design with a little expansion capabilities in mind when we put that together. So if you ever need to make the building managed by more kids, we have that infrastructure built in already. Not a lot, but it's a little bit. And then other things, some of the specials, STEM labs, some fab labs, music, special education areas, support spaces for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all those kinds of things. About $14 million, $14.4 million is our estimate for that. And then we've got allowances for technology, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, FF&E, kitchen equipment, playground equipment, and all of the little intricacies that it's going to take to get this building up and running. We've got that at about $920,000. So we also have accounted for a project contingency on a project of this scale. You have one on the other one, on the $12 million project. We're looking at about $990,000. So that all those numbers get us to $19.5 million. Okay. Timeline. If this were to be successful on April 2nd, we see the design phase, working with you guys, our engineers getting involved, all the intricacies of laying out the building the way you guys want it. We see that taken through from April basically through the end of the year, pretty much. Gives us a really nice time frame to bid the project, which would be end of the year, January-ish. Perfect time for bidding, because contractors are generally really trying to get their book work logged for the next summer. Then the construction would take us through the beginning of January-ish through when school starts in 2021. Very comfortable actually, schedule-wise that way.
So again, some of the advantages that have been talked about, one campus. I have several staff members who travel back and forth between the two buildings. A former staff member said, on average, about 15 minutes from the time they shut their classroom door here, get up to their car, get up to the other building, get into the middle school, high school building and are ready for, open for business, it was about a 15-minute trip. That particular staff member, her responsibilities, she worked into what worked best for the students, so she would make the trip twice a day. So in essence, about an hour's worth of her time was spent driving back and forth. Other staff, it might be a half hour, because they might leave here and go up and then end up coming back and then they stay. So you think from the furthest spot in the middle school, high school building, if that's where their work area was to get to the elementary building, you're talking probably about a 5-minute walk at best. Nobody has to use their cars to get in. The ability, the safety, putting everything together. The school nurse goes between two buildings. The police liaison officer goes between two buildings. And if both are in the same location, the elementary school, middle school, high school building, that just creates a little bit more safety for anybody that's injured or anybody that needs police intervention. Just an advantage of having it all on one campus. The construction, I have lived through 2 building projects. One of them as a teacher and one of them as a building principal, where they were doing the construction while kids were trying to learn. And it was difficult, to say the least. It seemed like I was a high school history teacher, and as soon as I started trying to get a discussion or talk about what was going on in the unit, it seemed like that's when the jackhammers or dump trucks started rolling, and it was kind of a lost class period for those students. So, yes, some of the construction is going to take place while students are in this location. Interior in here, a lot of it's going to take place during the summers. We have asked for a waiver, so depending on what happens in April, will depend on when we start school next fall. But I can speak to that personally and say that that is a disadvantage while construction is going on when people are in the building, students are in the building. And my students weren't this tall. You know, my students were this tall and still wanted to see what was going on. The disadvantage is, yes, you voted, you told us in November. That is a disadvantage to come back to you and ask again what direction you would like this to go. It's a higher dollar amount. Yep, that's a disadvantage. There's no doubt about that. So, one last time what the conceptual site plan looks like. This might be a little bit easier. Brad came down and met with the elementary staff. Brad and Tim Rupert came down and met with the elementary staff and took their ideas, you know, what would you like to see? And in their concepts, they didn't necessarily put everything in there. I can speak to this too in a factual manner. As a teacher, and we're almost all like this, we could have our own show about hoarding on, you know, Discovery Channel, because we're all hoarders. Because if I see something, you know what, that has value in it, and I might use that sometime. I'm not sure when or for what, but it's too good to throw away, so I'm going to keep it. So obviously we need storage space, and that's, excuse me, that was built in, you know, in those conversations. It wasn't necessarily laid out in the concepts that they drew up, but that's evident that teachers want that storage. Common areas where I can work with a smaller group of kids, and today it might be these 5 children, and tomorrow it might be 6 different students. And HSR was taking in all of those thoughts as they start to lay out how can we design a building. How can we lay it into the site and use it, the site, to the best of our advantage. Because in all honesty, that's why I'm not an architect, my thought was that building was going to go down here closer to Ross Street. It's a little bit more level. You could come right off of the street. I don't even know the name of the street down here. Not Madison, but the next one to the south. Put the driveway right there. Nice and easy in, easy out. And HSR came and said, well, is there any reason why we can't build it back here? I'm like, no, none whatsoever. Then we talked about how the buses line up in front of the school for middle school, high school students. And if you've been up there to pick up a middle school student or a high school student, at the end of the day, you know the kind of congestion that happens there. Denise is here, she might be able to share what some of the bus drivers say about that. And originally HSR said, well, what if we bring the buses in on the north side of the building, run across here, and I called it the bus cul-de-sac, just kind of put a bus drop-off, pick-up back here. Keeps all the buses out away from the car traffic and kid traffic in front of the school at the end of the day. Hey, that makes great sense, but I would like you to talk to Todd Schmitz. Todd runs our buses, and he had a chance to talk to the bus company or the bus drivers, and we have staff members and students that park here on this north side of the building. And I bet everybody can guess that when that last bell rings at the end of the day, who's in the biggest hurry to get out of the building? If you get in their vehicle and go somewhere. And if they have to make sure they're getting out before the buses get out, what's going to happen? So Todd was the one that said he really didn't like that idea. He didn't really like it, and HSR listened. And all of a sudden it was like, well, what if we bring this here? So this would be the bus pickup and drop off for elementary and middle school, high school students. So we would be taking all the bus traffic away from the front side of the building. So it makes it easier for parents to get in and pick up an elementary student, pick up a middle school student, and it separates that traffic as best as possible. Well, that's why I'm not the architect. Somebody's got to have a better mind and a better eye than I would have. But that's part of the plan behind that. Again, I ask you to vote. The last time I said it at the very end before you left, before anybody left. I will say it this time now. If you want the addition remodel, if that is your ultimate goal on April 2nd, you must vote no. Don't assume that the yeses won't have enough votes. If you want the additional remodel, if you want the school to stay on this location, you need to vote no. If you're in favor of a new school located up by the middle school, high school, then you would vote yes. So that's really what your two votes are saying, because you've already given us permission to do the additional remodel. A no vote says do the additional remodel. If you have questions, I will certainly try to answer. Again, Brad from HSR here on the design. If you have questions on the financing, Jordan is here from RWB. At this time, I would open it up to anybody that might have a question.
Have you run the numbers for like operating costs for heating, cooling this old building compared to the new facility?
Yeah. We're in the process of running those numbers, but generally speaking, with a new building, you know, again, a lot of this mechanical system in this structure was going to be upgraded, theoretically, in the budget, depending on how much structural work we need to get into, okay, because that's probably a priority. But with a new building, we know that that's going to be the most efficient systems you can buy, the most efficient layout you can buy, the most efficient building envelope you can get. So the operational costs on a new structure are going to be somewhat less because the sizes of the buildings are going to be very similar. Okay, so the percentages, I mean, you could say 10% maybe off the top of your bat.
Might get a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things. Back when this school was built, 2 years after it was built, I was on a committee with 10 other people here in Mineral Point, and we were trying to do concerns for the safety of the kids because everybody was scared that we were going to have somebody hit from where they would leave school, where they get picked up, and where they were left off. And that was a huge concern. And at that time, because of the concerns for safety, we recommended that they buy the Hodgins house and maybe the Bennett house and level this out so that the people would have a place for them to leave off their kids. And at one time, at the same time, they were thinking, well, maybe we could make Front Street here a one-way street. And they didn't think that that would get rid of the people leaving their kids off and picking them up in front of the elementary. It is so close to the school, and a lot of kids were scared that they were going to get hit by cars. So then they decided that they would let them come into the parking lot down. This was not our committee thinking this, but they thought, well, we'll leave them come into the parking lot to unload and pick up their kids. And then we won't allow any parking there. We'll let the kids go out there and play for recess and things like that. Well, a lot of people were confused with that, so they would bring their cars in and they would park in the lower parking lot, and then they'd have to find out who those cars belonged to. Then they'd have to have them move their cars out of there. And they still have such a problem crossing the streets and everything else down here. And that was a big concern. And then, I can't remember the year, but there was about 30 of us on a meeting group that met for almost 2 years when they got decided to build onto the old high school or not, whether to put another gym down there, add some classrooms. And it was thought of that at that time, we're still not going to have any parking. And we still don't have the parking here. And when those teachers that Mitch was talking about leave the school, they have to go up here to this upper parking lot, get in their car, and then if they come back down, they have to find another parking space, and then they go up to the other school, and they still have to find more spaces up there. So at that time, rather than build onto the school and still have no parking and everything else, they made the right decision in Mineral Point to build a new high school, which we can all be proud of. We have one of the nicest ones in all of southwestern Wisconsin. And if you look at a lot of these other communities, Dodgeville, I could go on, Lancaster, Highland, Donington, all where they have the elementary school next to the high school. And with the parking and that, they would have that for football and any other games too. They'd have more parking if they had it all up there together. And if you go ahead and refurbish the school and make another gym down here, there's still going to be no parking. The safety for the kids is still going to be very poor. And so many people have told me, because I was on that group, that they wish we would have bought these two houses and did what we thought they should do at that time. But that wouldn't change things now. So the safety is huge. And I've lost 2 girls, not from parking or anything like this, but I know how hard it is to lose a child, and all we have to do is have that happen one time. So I hope that you make the right decision, and I'm completely for a new elementary up there by the high school. And I've talked to a lot of older people that said, hey, we did this when you were kids, and I think now, I'm older, we have to do this for our kids and grandchildren coming up after that.
Before I was talking about the boiler system or your heating system down here, what is the actual dollar amounts that it takes to fix things down here? I'd like to have more breakdown of that, so actually it proves why we shouldn't be doing it down here. Are we looking at $1 million to have to fix up the heating system, or?
The best we could, again, we've looked at this building a little bit. We haven't totally immersed ourselves in the building, but we're knowledgeable enough on what the key criteria are in helping this building. One is the structural piece, okay? We definitely feel that's an important piece, because if you're going to invest in this building by adding on, for sure adding on and doing some remodeling, you need to make sure the building's sound and not going to keep moving. Now, it's not going to fall down by any means, but it moves every year a little bit. And that's a concern, and it's a challenge to fix. Now, to get to your point of question is the mechanical system. In the original $11.9 million project, the best we can analyze is that there would be about $3.775 million to go into fixing up the existing part of the building. We think the structural piece could get up to as high as $2 million, okay? Which leaves 1.75 for not only the mechanical and electrical systems, but whatever remodeling we need to do. I know there was some classroom reworking, making some classrooms bigger, some of those functional things that need to be done, just as much as the mechanical system does. So that's our challenge with this project, is we would have to really pay attention on how that money would be spent.
I'm kind of late in this party, so I got a lot of questions. I'll try to limit them. But, okay, so I'll make sure I'll later if I have time. But, yeah, nothing new there, right? So, anybody that's lived in Minter Point very long knows that when Coyote Ridge was built, there were some unexpected mine shafts. In fact, legend has it that the truck went down in one of those holes. I think probably people have heard that story. Regardless of which solution we have, there are risks. There are risks with this foundation, we know that. It's also, I don't know if everyone knows this, but I think it was about 10 years ago, if you look to the left of Mrs. Kelm's room and to the left of Mrs. Roberts' room, you're going to see some holes in the floor where there were holes drilled and samples were taken because there were concerns about this building moving, and those concerns were alleviated when they took those samples. When we don't know what's in that hill. We don't know if there are mine shafts in there like there are all over this town. We don't know how much bedrock there is, how that's going to have to be exploded, and when that explodes, how's that going to impact the high school that's right beside it, how much clay there is, and we don't know that even if we build that 5 years down the road, that building, like every other building in town, isn't going to start settling. I mean, I built a brand new house once, designed it, I didn't build it, had it built. Within a year, there's a crack in the ceiling. It wasn't the builder's fault, it's the way that it is here. I live in a house that was built in 1860. Last fall, I was doing some rip-out work because there's a little soft spot in the closet. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, I'm tearing out the carpet. The builder had said, "What's under there? Is it a crawl space?" I said, "I have no idea." Assumed it was a crawl space. My left foot went through the floor, and it did not touch. And I scrambled, luckily, out of there fast. I'm not a little gal, and luckily the whole floor didn't give way. I shone a light down there, big hole, water on the bottom, like holy buckets. I don't know if this is a mine shaft. I don't know what the heck this is, but I'm sure it's going to cost me $20,000. Luckily, I didn't just abandon the place and say, that could cost me a lot of money. My house was roughly worth about $100,000, so the math is easy. I could have just left that place. I couldn't have, but went and bought a $200,000 house. Good luck finding a buyer, and good luck for my neighbors who are now stuck with this house that's abandoned. Luckily, very luckily, that happened to be a cistern. No wonder I don't get water in my basement. When I'm coming down Maiden Street, I should get water in my basement, but I have a cistern. It's a gift. So cap that off. It's safe. 50 years from now, somebody who else owns that house, and they're going to be surprised and maybe not as lucky as me. And I still have no protection from that water. And I really think that we're overblowing the concerns with this building. There's a big amount of contingency if there are problems with this building built into the referendum we already passed. I'm going to just circle into my other question right now so I can get this over with. But we voted for that referendum in November. The school is on the hook for that, even if this new one passes. And I've heard grand plans about what could be done with the school. You know what, with this building, what this building would make is a great elementary school. It'd be a great elementary school. You wouldn't have to refit things. Yes, you have to refurbish things, but you don't have to put a bathroom in every room. And nobody's gonna buy this place for fancy condos. You have money for a fancy condo, you don't wanna share your wall with somebody next door and your ceiling with somebody above you. The high school had grand plans when we built the new high school. Take a look at that one day. Go walk in there. It's for sale. Take a tour. See what kind of shape that's in. That building's for sale. How in God's name are we going to sell this building? And what money is left to do anything with it? What's to keep a new buyer that wants to buy this building? Foundation needs fixed. The boiler's from 1968. On and on and on and on. When I bought my house, there were some issues, and as a condition of sale, those issues had to be addressed before I'd buy my house. I'm sure other people have done the same thing. Somebody wants to buy this to do something, we just approved, what was it, 11.6?
11-9.
11.9? What's to keep us from knowing that there's not gonna be a difficult school board meeting, that money's been approved, we gotta sell this building, and tapping into that money that was already allocated to this? What's to keep, what assurance do we have that somebody won't come up with some lawsuit and say, you have to fix this building, because I live next to it, and it's affecting my property value, which in turn is affecting the mill rate, and those of us that don't live here are then paying more in taxes because property rates around the abandoned building go down. I don't know that I really had a question there, but I do have one question. And most important question is Brad, has any work been done to know what you're dealing with in that site?
On the site, no, we have not done soil borings. We do have soil borings from the high school project. So we have that knowledge. And we do understand that there's a lot of bedrock in the area. But I can pretty much assure you that when we get done developing and doing our site preparation for the building itself, we're going to make sure there's no mine shafts or any of that
Well,
stuff.
if they're there, you can't make sure they're not.
Well, we pretty much can, I think. Yeah.
You can make sure they're, so you're not gonna know if they're there till you start digging.
Right, exactly right. But we can do some borings and some history, kind of, you know, I think there's some ways we can really get a good idea. And quite honestly, that's a good point. It might determine whether the building is shifted a little bit one way or another. You know, there could be some justification.
But those borings won't happen before we vote. So we vote.
No, they won't.
And then we're stuck.
I mean,
depending on how-
again, but I think you can rest assured that the site is buildable, very buildable. Okay?
Alex?
Yeah, that's the hand went up that wanted to comment on that, and I kind of wanted to go with it. But I'm just gonna anyway, because I was called on again. So, I'm like on the fence. I keep getting pulled one way with one emotion and the other way with the other emotion, and it's super frustrating. This sucks. Regardless, it sucks. We shouldn't be arguing either way. We all want our kids to have a good education. I love this town. I love its character. I think my kids, I want them to be able to come home and be like, yeah, that's where I went to school. That's my elementary school, and be proud of it. And my kids right now love it here. They love this school. I love this school. I love the history. You know, there's a lot of heart in that. I play on emotions a little too easily. So if this goes, I'll be sad to see it go. Yeah, I want, you know, the nice new thing too. But regardless, I think we just have to remember that we're all out for the same thing, and we all want this town to succeed. And I do say that I think we all need to pay a little bit more attention. I'm learning to the city council and the decisions that are made there, and I think we need to possibly maybe start to address the needs of the community and whether or not, I don't know, make sure we're making the right balance between historical and new, and whether we can accept new companies, even if certain new companies start to bring in new people. I think the main thing we need to do is get new people in this town and lower our taxes that way. We can't lower the taxes until new people start helping us split them up. So I think we need to all kind of start taking a bigger part in the city as a whole and finding out ways to do that. So anyway, that said, I'm on the fence. Start throwing emotions at me, and you're going to pull me whichever way, whoever's talking which way. But referring to Mike, the parking, how many new spots are we supposed to be gaining? Because it looks really little.
I don't know that it's drawn to scale. I couldn't tell you that there's 50 spots in there or 150 spots in there. But I guess
I mean, you're
there is
gonna
one
need-
middle school teacher here, and I'm pretty sure that middle school teacher would be more than happy to park in a spot down here, because this is gonna be much closer to his classroom than parking over here. So, I don't know how many middle school, high school, elementary school teachers are gonna park in there.
But I
it's gonna be
assume we're
built-
gaining more spots than we have here, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So where is the parking? I don't really see it. I see a place for people to pick up and.
Where it says car drop off?
Yeah, that'll actually be parking there too?
Yes.
So is that it for the new parking?
Well, then on the other side where the buses come in, can that be used for parking also?
No. The concept, just like the lower parking lot here, is playground during the day, and then parents come in to
The
pick
ones on
up.
the side.
So they would use that as a hard surface play area for elementary students when it gets to be this
So Brad,
time
is
of year.
that something that you guys have contemplated, like roughly how many spots we're gaining?
I mean, again, I think we're gonna get at least half as many as you have out there already, okay? And again, we've got a lot of flexibility in the size of this. We can make that grow, we can make that bigger if we want to. There's a lot of flexibility in this layout.
Half as many are that are here, not half as many that are here.
Right.
So times 1.5.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this, is, again, whenever we look at a new building, whether it's an addition to an existing building, or a new structure next to an existing, or even attached, we try to look at the whole picture. We don't just say, okay, we're gonna plop this building down here. We put it there for a lot of good reasons, in an effort to make this building work better.
I guess as a parent who has used the lower elementary parking for pickup, it looks like the same thing's gonna be happening there. So are people gonna pull in those parking spots and be pulling out while kids are trying to get picked up? Is it a different system?
There could be. I'm not saying this is the end all here, but the idea is that cars would come around. All this tan area is basically sidewalk, plaza, I'll call it plaza area between the two buildings. So you might pick up high school kids on this side, or middle school kids. Elementary kids might get picked up on this side. The idea is that it's easy, convenient, you can get a lot of cars that line up, or the ability to drop off, because I know whenever kids get picked up, there's always a line. Parents come early even sometimes.
You don't have pickup here. It's you park, you get your kid, and you go back to your car, and then it's a challenge of, okay, now I have to get out of my spot and not hit a kid or an adult.
Right. We
So,
want to avoid all those
I just wanna make
situations.
sure that there's some sort of thought process. If we're gonna go through that trouble, then can we make it not that same issue?
Yeah, we definitely need to make it not that same issue. And
Then
again,
also, Alex, you have to remember, this parking lot is so small down here, and none of these side streets have parking.
Right.
So the only place to pick your kid up is to park in this parking lot. And I've noticed even this year, probably the worst, is people are now trying to park on Cawthorn Street, and now the police are enforcing them, and they're not being allowed to park there to pick up their kids. At least here, you're having more area to come in and get your kids. Even if you have to walk up to the school and get them, there's more parking spaces.
Right.
I mean, that's what we have to remember, is there's just overall more space. These streets around this school are so small, and the teachers don't have enough room to park up here in the parking lot. So now they're parking on the street during the day, and then you have parents coming at the end of the day to pick up the kids that are trying to find spots in the parking lot. If they're not, they're parking 2-3 blocks away and then having to walk into the school to get their kids. Because the teachers are taking up spaces, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Nobody can help that.
Does the remodel have new parking or no?
No.
No
No,
parking added?
there have been actually conceptual designs where they actually added and.
A little bit more space up here.
Yeah, all of that would be designed, later on. I think we should get away from this topic because that's all designed.
The size of the parking lot can be talked about in the 6 months after it passes.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, has any thought been given to what's going to happen with this building? If this goes through and they build it there, what's happening to this place?
At our last school board meeting, the school board had their first conversation about possibilities. But as the timeline was laid out, if the referendum were to be successful in April, you're looking at 2 years before this building would be empty. So there is some time to try to figure out what best to do with this building. And again, we all realize that once it's sold, we don't own it, we don't get to decide what happens next. Just like happened with the old high school, once it was sold, it's,
So it would possibly go up for sale?
that's one possibility. Okay, Nancy?
Couple of things. I did some research on mines this week. I went to the Mineral Point room and I asked, do you have a mine map of Mineral Point? And out they pulled a 1963 map that said Mines of Mineral Point, and underneath it said Ivy Construction. So the first thing I did was look on this map to see if there were any mines here. None. No mines. So I can assure you, no mines on this site. I then went and looked at the other school, okay, at the new location. No mines there. So anyway, Larry, that's a place to start.
That's
the
Brad.
mine map of Mineral Point.
That's Brad.
Oh, excuse me, Brad. Located in the Mineral Point room at the library. You can't
Perfect.
take it out, or I would have brought it tonight. Okay, they have to have it.
Come back.
Thanks for doing
Go
that
ahead.
research.
I have one more question. Will you let me ask it?
Sure.
Well, no, I do want to
Sure,
say.
that was a question, sure.
Okay, there were several ideas brought up last week at the meetings, and one of them was evaluate moving the option school to the elementary school location. One was having Southwest Tech teach classes at the elementary. Another one was having a private daycare business lease part of this building. And another one was holding an after-school program. All of those were ideas brought up by board members, and all of those were ideas that require the district to keep this building. So, we're keeping the building? I mean, all of those ideas were going to involve something here, and we would become landlords in the process. So, I'm just saying it's easy to put ideas out there, not so easy to achieve them.
There was no mention of the board getting into the rental business at the school board meeting. Absolutely none. Baseless claim. Thank you.
Gary, you had a question?
Well, I think first of all, I want to thank you, Mitch, because you kind of got thrown into a rough job here in the last 6 months. I can't imagine the stress that you've had through this. I think the bottom line for me is it comes down to common sense. We're on the hook for $13.85. Going up to the new school for an extra $93 on the $100,000 is just complete common sense to me. And I think anybody that tries to argue that differently, I don't know how you can argue it differently. The bus route to me is worth the money alone. I think that bus route is an absolute slam dunk idea. We all know another gymnasium would be nice to use, and to have it up there is another great thing. The sunlight is going to heat that building so much better than anything we could possibly put in this building. That's just the way it is when sunlight faces through the south. Internet access is going to be better. Everything about it is better. And I just don't want to see a political agenda get put in front of a common sense vote.
That's right.
Abby?
So I just want to testify as a current senior at the school that driving out of that driveway, adding the parents to that one spot where everyone will be driving out, it's already hectic for all students who are driving to get out of there, plus the parents who pick up their middle schoolers. So I don't think adding that extra car drop-off will help with the through traffic going out to Ross Street. Another point I wanted to make was to attest to Mo. I lived in Piety Ridge for 7 years. It was a great neighborhood. We didn't know any problem. Before we were going to move to our next house, we had a 50-foot sinkhole in our front yard, at least 10 feet across, and we had to pay to fill that. So we didn't even know that there were mines under us. We didn't know, but that was something we had to deal with, and that's part of Mineral Point. The other thing I wanted to ask about is how much space of the Oak Savannah is being taken out, because I just think it's a really harsh thing to do, to take out all that work that Don Hawkins has put in just to add a little bit more outdoor play space for the elementary kids. And why can't we add more parking to where our old football field is up there? I mean, we built a brand new football field, so that gives us so much more space over there. We can move the baseball field further away to add more parking. So I just wanted to give my thoughts as a
Do you
high
have
schooler.
an impact on square footage, Brad, on the footprint?
The footprint, again, the building, I mentioned the building is 72,000 square feet. That doesn't mean the footprint's 72,000 square feet, because part of it's 2 stories. The classroom piece is 2 stories. So I'm gonna guess that footprint is about 50,000 square feet. And again, you know, the sky's the limit for how we develop this space. We wanna be sensitive to what's been done there, to not only the natural part of that site as well, and have as little impact, and quite honestly, that's kind of how we see this building. Try to have minimal impact on this site, but still take advantage of the beauty of that site, okay?
Mitch, I want to just address one thing about the baseball field. We looked into building a baseball field. We were given estimates to be over $1 million for a baseball field. So if we put parking up here, we lose the baseball field. And I don't know if you want a baseball field, but we were told it would be another $1 million for a new baseball field.
Because soldiers is a WIAA.
It's not regulation.
So this is regulation.
Okay, I have a point of clarification that I want to ask Brad, and then also
Sure.
just another question. I was listening to the previous board meeting, and you've already let us know that the new building is proposed to be 72,000 square feet. Now, I don't know if I misheard or not, but if this refurbish addition here, I heard the total would be 84,000 square feet.
And I think that's right.
Is that correct?
That's
So
correct.
it's an additional
Yep.
12,000 square feet. if we
But the reason that this needs to be a little bigger is to try to achieve some of the same things functionally that we can
Sure.
achieve in a new structure at 72.
Sure, so I just wanted to clarify that there's that difference there.
Yep.
And then I do have a question for you in particular, because I know that your firm was brought into this whole process after the first referendum had passed. And I know that part of what you do as a firm is that you try to, you know, encourage the voters to support the referendums. You know, I've looked at your marketing materials.
Okay, we try to encourage and inform
Okay,
people.
encourage and
We don't tell
I'm
people
just-
how to vote.
I know you don't.
Okay.
I know you don't. But I completely understand what you're, you know, I've looked at your marketing materials, I've looked at your website, I've seen a lot of the other projects you do. And what I would like to hear from you is that if this new referendum fails,
Mhm.
and we are looking at refurbishing and putting an addition on this
Right.
building, I want to hear from you the pride you have in the other projects that you have expanded and remodeled, and let us know how great this can be for $11.9 million. That's what I want to hear from you.
Okay, I mean, it's a good question and a very fair question. It's our goal to make whatever project we're working on the best it can be for the money that's available, okay? So we're gonna, if this project is the one you choose to do, we will work hard to make sure we can get it to be the best it can be. Now, it's not gonna be a new building when it's all said and done. And we know we're gonna have challenges with the budget with how much we can remodel in the existing structure. Because we think we know we need 24,000 square feet of new space. We're even already thinking of, you know, because that original drawing showed it kind of at an angle out here. And in my mind, again, just like this project, we want to make the whole better. Not just add a building on, not just tack something on. So we're going to look at different opportunities on how the building might get placed on the site. It might end up just like it was drawn in the referendum. I don't know that, but we want to make sure we study those things, okay? A lot of our work is addition, remodeling, refurbishing existing structures. So I'm all for that. I do feel that there's a point in time where you kind of hit the wall and you can't maybe get everything done that you want to or need to or should with money that might be available, okay?
Okay, so I'm still hearing a pretty downer view from you about doing an addition remodel. I don't want to
Well,
hear that.
and
If
I
you're
wanna
gonna
be
our
honest with
architect,
you.
If this referendum
But
passed,
there's only so much
doesn't-
money he's got
I
to work
know,
with. That's
I
what he's
do.
saying right there.
I
That's what I'm
understand
saying.
that,
Yep.
but
We're gonna give you the best effort we
Great.
can to
Okay.
make this building as best it can be. And that's the honest truth, okay?
well, I have looked at some of the projects you've done and the
Mhm.
cost that they've incurred. And I've seen some of those images on
Yep.
your site, and for similar amounts of money and similar,
Yep.
you've done amazing things with some of the addition remodels.
Mhm.
And I just, so I know that that can happen.
It can.
I have a question for the representative from Baird. I'm just curious as to what the bond rates are and when will we lock those in, regardless of if we borrow 19.5 or 11.9. Obviously, with interest rates, it costs more than that to borrow that. And I guess I'm curious, is that figure built into our projected mill rate?
Yes, yes. So the principal and the interest is projected into the mill rate that we're estimating. So we were pretty conservative when we put the plan together. We used interest rates of 4.25%. I would say if we were to lock it in right now and issue debt right now, we'd probably be closer to 3.5%, which on almost $20 million is pretty meaningful.
So speaking of interest rates, my mind doesn't wrap around the mill rate, my mind wraps around like the total cost of things. So what I did is a calculation with the 4.25 amortized over 20 years, and the remodel, and it essentially with interest at 4.25, if we can get it cheaper, great, is 17.71 million, and the new building is 28.98 million. Running the amortization calculators to figure out the tax, to figure out the interest plus the principal. And so my mind wraps around that it's $11.27 million more for the addition than it is for the remodel. So whatever that equals in a mill rate and however that's divided among all of us, it's still the bottom dollar. I go to buy something, I want to know how much it is, not my monthly payment.
Your estimates are actually pretty good. Wow. But you're right, yeah, you're not just paying back the principal, you're paying back interest as well. One thing to keep in mind that the district does receive state aid. So for every dollar that this district spends, it actually costs taxpayers, I think, roughly 82 cents. So a portion of it will be paid by state aid.
At what point do they lock that in though? Like, let's say it passes or doesn't pass, at what point then is a trigger pulled to lock that rate and lock us in? Because rates are lower now than what they have been.
Right.
and
Right,
just
and even
hoping
over the
to
last 6
capitalize on
months,
that. I guess
they've come down
I'm
more.
just uncertain of what the timeline is.
So right now, it very estimated, it would be based on when it's going to be most beneficial to the district. We're going to pick a day to go into the market, when rates are low, when there's not a lot of other bonds selling. But right now, we're projecting around midsummer.
So then one more question in addition. On the bottom of our tax bills this year, there was a Mineral Point school that said that it was a certain amount of tax on each one of our tax bills that had a dollar amount, and it said until 2039. And so the question I guess I have is, have we been starting to pay tax on the remodel, or is that amount that our taxes are showing in the Mineral Point School District to 2039, is that just what we're agreeing to pay with the $350,000 recurring referendum and whatever the recurring referendum is up at the high school?
So that on your tax bill is tied back to the last successful referendum. When we put the plan together, we projected the payments going out to 2039. Regarding this current tax bill, there was a small amount levied to get it started based on the last successful referendum.
Okay, and so if that's a small amount levied, what percent of the total will that be so that we can go back and look at our taxes and then estimate how much minus your calculator?
Yeah, so that was, I don't know the mill rate that was attributed to that.
Okay.
But there is a tax calculator on the district's website, I believe. So
Yep.
you can put your property value in there. It's going to tell you what the impact is for
Yeah,
you.
no, I did that. It looks like it's about 50% of what it should be based on the 2018 calculator that I went to.
as far as this tax, maybe, but keep in mind for the school levy, there are other components that go into it other than just referendum debt service. As what was alluded to earlier, the mill rate for the school district actually went down this past year. Even though there was a small levy for that referendum component, the overall mill rate did go down this past year. And that's a function of the operating dollars for the district that fluctuates over time.
And is a high school paid?
Yes. Yeah, until last November, we were one of a handful of schools that had no debt referendum that way.
I have a boring nuts and bolts question. On your projected budget for the build-up, nowhere on there was any moving plans. So I'm wondering if any consideration has been made for moving storage and movers for the property that's here that will be moving there.
In the last district that I was a part of, I'm looking at the numbers.
Everyone in the shelves and wells.
If that's what's being moved, yeah, we would ask that. The last school district I was a part of was the Highland School District, and when they moved in the middle of the school year, they just asked, would you be willing to? And it was a yes, and it was, hey, this group is assigned to Carrie Radke's room, and Carrie Radke's gonna say what gets moved, and then she'll meet you there, and Carrie Radke will tell you where it gets put. I mean,
That's one of the reasons this community is awesome. We're all gonna be there no matter what the vote is. We're gonna support each other.
I live here, by the way, I do.
personally, no matter how the vote comes out on April 2nd, I've said this in the newspaper, I've said it multiple times. This community supports education, and I don't look at the outcome of the April 2nd referendum any differently. The people have spoken, and they support education, and I believe that. I believe that deep into my core, that that's what makes Mineral Point a great place. Whether it's a yes vote or a no vote, it is in support of education.
Okay, 2 questions, try to be brief, but real quick, I know you don't do numbers like you guys, some of you do, but is this a bid or an estimate? Is the first of like 4 questions, but I'll make them quick.
This is, whatever the project is, can't be more than this.
Right.
If costs go up, then we have to take things out because we cannot go over 11.92.
What if it doesn't go that high for whatever reason? I know it's an educated number and I get that, but I'm in the construction business, so I also know the difference between a bid and an estimate. And I just wanted to know, like, what if we don't hit the 19.5 million? Do our taxes maybe not cover that?
Correct. One of the things that, and Jordan might speak to it better, one of the things that when Lisa Voisin is another representative from R.W. Baird that I've spoken with, we would look at releasing the bonds in almost 2 phases, no more than $10 million. Is that correct, Jordan?
Typically, yeah.
So you would look at a 10 million release and a 9.5. Well, if it's 10 million and it doesn't need to be 9.5, we wouldn't go after the 9.5, we would go after
But if it's
8.5.
12 million, you need that extra 2, are we trapped into the 9?
Yes, we cannot go over 19.5
No, but
million.
can we go under?
Yes.
Yes.
Always gonna go under.
So with our contract with the builder, it could come in less than,
When you send
19.5.
out bids, you have people bid on things.
right,
and
but
you
that's what I mean, a
accept
bid
those
you're
bids.
locked into and he's gonna
Right.
get the full amount, an estimate is like,
Oh,
you got.
you always have to have bids.
We're not even there.
Yeah.
They're putting a
Right.
plan together that they're saying 19.5 will do this. And it can't be more than 19.5. The bids may come in when we get to the contractor and builders and
Yeah.
subcontractors, it may come in at 18 million, at which time you don't levy that additional amount and you're only levying 18 million instead of 19.5, which brings the tax impact down.
Okay, great. Moving on, real quick, bus routes are the, what's the impact on the changing, because I know it's like a mile from the school, to what?
2
What are we
months.
saving by doing this?
Are you talking about in-town
Yeah,
pickups?
no, yeah, so like we just got a bus close to us, which is amazing, but my kids don't have sidewalks all the way to school. And I don't think they still will, especially since right across from the, yeah, anyway, there's all kinds of gaps in the sidewalks, so I think that's part of the ruling too, right?
Yep.
So I'm assuming we're gonna have to make some changes there, maybe not. I guess we survived without them now. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm assuming there was a question in there, and I'm gonna try to give you an answer, because
Go.
it's one of the few questions that actually was asked of me.
How many more kids are gonna be on the bus or less kids are gonna be on the bus?
I spoke with Todd, and part of what you're saying is very accurate. It's 2 miles. You know, if you're outside of that 2 mile, you get picked up, or if it's sidewalks, not a safe path. And we would look at working with the bus company, in this case Todd right now, as to where we would need to put additional in-town pickups to make sure students get to the elementary school, if indeed it were moved to that location.
But it's not like adding bus routes, like we figured that, right? Like, you know, it's not gonna add bus routes or add personnel. I mean, we're trying to save busing, so I just want to make sure
Correct.
that's in balance.
At this point in time, there's not a plan to add additional bus routes.
Can I add a little
They
bit?
bus to downtown, right?
What's that?
They would have to bus to downtown, they can't just walk downtown anymore for field trips, for kids, right? I heard that. You guys said they walk it down.
You could walk.
Matt, is there a rule, could you explain that? Is the distance that the elementary students are allowed to walk for a field trip?
I don't know if there is a rule.
There isn't? Okay,
I don't know if there is.
okay.
But would there probably be less times that you get to walk down there based on the amount of time it takes these little legs to get there?
My last year elementary child preferred to ride the bus to the high school and walk from there because it was actually an easier walk to my downtown store salon. Because it was safer. She felt it was a safer walk.
I just don't want I don't want them to have bus trips anywhere, and if they can't take the bus,
I don't feel that that would be a bother.
I can't personally speak to this.
Yeah.
Matt might be able to answer this better. At the middle school, high school, you're on that 45-minute time period.
So I look,
You gotta get out and back within 45 minutes.
Right.
The elementary schedule might be a little bit more flexible, so that if they were to walk, there's certainly, you don't have that 45-minute time constraint.
Yeah,
But-
I just don't want to jeopardize the opportunity to get out of school and see things.
so to walk from like, probably our most frequent trips are to the public library. So I'm looking at Google Maps, it's 1.2 miles there. So it's a 2.5 mile round trip. Things to worry about, you leave when it's sunny and it's raining by the time you're coming back. Just the unpredictability of the weather. And then I think it is a longer distance too than compared to where we're at now.
From here to downtown, I think it's 0.6.
Yeah, sounds about right. So at least half the distance from here to over there.
So will it be approved that they can take buses, or is that like a whole nother expense that they're not gonna be allowed to do?
That'll be a whole nother expense, whether they're allowed to do it. It would just depend on the budget constraints.
Okay. And that's sad, but I like to so.
Mo?
A couple of really smart people were throwing some numbers around, and I think I might have understood. But you mentioned something about interest rates being really low right now, or bond rates being really good. We have an approval right now for 11.92 million, regardless of what happens. So would we be smart to have a $10 million release now, knowing that those rates could change by the time this goes through?
You're asking the wrong person.
Mr.
If you release the only referendum we have passed right now is this one.
But we have one, we know where, if that fails, we're doing this, right? All right, sorry.
The few things I do know is when I called the state and said, look, we have, in essence, a $12 million referendum passed. Can I go back to the people and ask for 7 million more? And the answer was no. Because the first referendum has to be, you go and say, what are you doing with it? And that money is specific to this location. So I couldn't issue debt for $10 million and then turn around and say, I'm gonna spend it up there. Because
You
that,
have to specify what it's for.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
well, that's unfortunate.
It is. But in essence, you know,
But that's why you can't go back into that 11 point whatever million and take that for additional monies up at the other school either.
Correct.
No, but you can spend it here.
I'm just saying, there was a question before that we went over the 19 million, could we come back and take money out of this 11 million? We can't.
Yes,
We
you
can't
can, I
touch
checked with DPI today.
it. No, because it's
has to be
designated only
spent
for
here.
remodeling.
But it could be spent here.
It can't be spent there, so if that project went to 22 million, it's not like I got this
Right.
hidden
Right,
pot of
right.
money to spend
But
up
it
there.
could be spent here.
It can only be spent here.
But you do have a pot, I mean, you still have the ability, the school has no debt right
Correct.
now. So you have the
To
ability
be clear, there's no debt for
to
referendum.
get $1
debt.
million, you can take out a loan without getting our approval, right? That's right.
Yep.
And you've got Fund 46, which has $500,000. So you do have an extra $1 million in hand.
Part of that, I believe part of the money on the million has been borrowed for energy efficiency projects, and the other half can't be touched until the summer of 2020.
And that would include the new windows in the school, correct? New windows for energy efficiency here in the school. They were put
You
in.
guys are on the board when, I don't know if that's what you used to pay for the windows when they were put in. I don't know if that's where you got the money to put those windows in, or where that money came from.
Lisa would remember, I'd have to
Jeff
check it
was
out.
not in this.
Okay. Alex, you have a question?
Yeah, so, again, I'm not trying to sway anyone one way or another, just trying to ask questions. Okay, so if the new building gets approved and we've spent however, $19.5 million.
Yeah.
I just keep throwing around different numbers and it's getting confusing. What are some of the reasons, what are some of the things, like, in my head, it's like, gosh, that's a lot of money, really maxing out my budget here. What if you guys need more money for something, or like, what if we have opportunities? I don't know what the more money the school could be for, would be for, but like programming or teachers, or let's say the town grows and, well, then I guess maybe there'd be more money to go around. But if we spend that much, give me reasons why we might need to spend more in the future, and could we be limited on new opportunities and new programming our students could see? I'm just trying to say, like, how much are you gonna stretch that budget? And why would you need to, and is there still room to get new opportunities for my kids? Does that make sense?
Those would be two, you're talking about two different pots of money in essence.
Okay.
The referendum money is only for what you said the referendum money is for. I couldn't say I'm gonna take the 19.5, spend 12 on a
Just talking about my
new
taxes.
building and keep 7.5 to do all these other things.
Just talking my taxes going up again in the future.
We're talking about this pot of money on this side.
Like, what would
There's only
we
one
spend?
pot of money, it's what we're gonna pay.
Correct.
It's $3 million for a new Main Street. It's $1 million for Pine Street. It's $2 million for a new, police station and garage. And all of city's, utilities spring leaks every winter. And my councilman told me they're not gonna finish Pine Street, where I live, this year, because they don't have the $750,000 to do it. I was almost happy, because if they finish Pine Street, they're gonna put in new curb and gutter. I get to pay for half the curb and gutter. I get to pay for $3,200 to put in a new non-lead pipe to my house when they hook up the water. Where does all this money come from?
The taxpayers.
Yeah, the taxpayers. A lot of taxpayers can't afford this incremental stuff. I mean, yeah, I agree it doesn't sound like very much in one pot, but I think the school system needs to be talking to the city about their combined problems. Because the infrastructure in this city is in a bad place.
I think, in very fairness to you, the city had all of that planned out. It was all documented before that referendum in November was ever passed. So it's not like that's a surprise to all of us, like, the city had that. We knew all along, I'm not in the city, but everybody in the city knew that that money was gonna be spent. So I'm not saying that you're arguing anything at all, but this is all well known.
But I still don't don't understand, and again, I guess I didn't know that, so this whole thing has kind of brought up all these issues about, like, maybe we need to get to the heart of the city again, so I apologize for being naive and not knowing these facts about our city being so far in debt, but I'm just like, okay, we need 3 million for this, we need 1 million for this road, we need to replace every pipe under Main Street, whatever it is. That $93 more a year on $100,000, okay, doesn't sound like a lot, but when it comes to fixing up other areas of our city, let's say that, what's the difference between the two? 8 million, not 7 million, I can't remember. 7 million. What would that get us if that money was put towards other improvements in our city? Again, not pushing in either direction, just curious, because I don't understand how cities work and where the tax money goes, but it takes, I don't know. Does anyone have an answer for that? I'm just curious, I just want to know, like, is my money, is tax money going to the right place? It's $93, but that's per household. When you start adding all that up into other repairs, I'm just curious. Per year.
For 20 years.
Right. So I just want to make sure as a community we're putting it in the right place.
I think some people should probably attend some city council meetings.
Yeah, I'm starting to.
And really be enlightened. You can't make decisions tonight based on everything in our city. That's pretty difficult.
That the school referendum does pass for the 19.5. This 11.7 or 9, is that null and void, that's done? Or do you still hold that pocket of money?
We have, the school board has the authority for up to 5 years. It does not go away. So I had asked that question as well. In the referendum question, can we, and they said, no, you can't ask it that way. So the school board has talked about having a resolution that says they will not go use that money and impact the taxpayers that way.
Okay, my second question is, let's say that I'm interested in buying a building if this passes to go to the new high school. But my bid is that you fix the so-called problem with the foundation. Where are you gonna get that money? If you work with me on it.
It would have to come out of the general operating fund, out of the high school, middle school, high school budget, or the district budget. It couldn't come out of referendum budget.
And that would be to the whatever million, whatever it would cost. If you guys would have that money, you won't have to go to the taxpayers and say, I need more money to fix the old elementary because we let that 5 year, 11 point whatever go, and now we have to fix it.
That's correct. That's how it happened. Lisa?
You know what I'm going to talk about, this building. Those of us who live here, I walked to this meeting because I can see this building, I can get to this building. We're seeing the other buildings deteriorate. I am not comfortable with it being so vague what's going to happen to this building if this new referendum passes. I'm surprised that the school board is comfortable having so minimal idea of what's going to happen to this monstrosity if we abandon it and move the school.
So we should keep pouring money into it.
So, I mean, I'm under the impression you can't tell me anything about the future of this building. And you think you have 2 years to figure it out. That's disturbing to me.
Because that would be a school board decision. That's not a Mitch Wainwright decision, that's a school
No, I
board
know,
decision.
but the school board doesn't know either.
That's a valid.
But we're voting not knowing what we're getting. Because
I think the argument, and I know you won't want to agree.
right, but that doesn't explain what happens to this. And that has to be a piece of that.
And ma'am, I think the argument could also be said that you know when you bought that house, you bought it towards an old school. So you knew in the future there's a possibility that they could be moving out of this school. That's always true.
Did you ever consider putting in contingent, or in the budget that you're looking at for the new school, an X amount of dollars for actually tearing down this building? Because when we did it at Chilton, we actually had figured in $500,000 went to the tear down of the building unless we sold it to somebody else that was going to use it. And then we had the choice of how it was going to be used. Actually, we sold it to the city for $1 because they took and destroyed it, took it and tore it down, and then put it into a park. They have the football field and they made everything around it look just beautiful. But that is another thing to look at, is that you figure in X amount for actually demolition.
That's not in the budget.
That is not in any budget.
But to that point, I hadn't thought about that before, and I kind of like that idea, because it's hard for me, even though I appreciate all of you that live close to the school, but like, eventually the new one's gonna be an old building, and there's a lot less people that can see that one from the road. So I guess I'm just like, I'm just telling, those of you, it's hard to hear that, because most of us don't see this, and this feels like it's in the middle of nowhere in the middle of town. So that's a hard argument to push. I understand and I appreciate, and I don't want another abandoned building. And no small businesses are gonna survive here. This town is not that great at supporting them. But I think that's a really good point. Is that something that we can go back to, and how would you guys feel that live close to here if it was torn down?
Better than if it's falling down.
Well, whether the city buys it for $1 and bulldozes it for $500,000, you as taxpayers are still paying for it, so what's the difference where the money comes from?
Who you're mad at. You won't be mad at me,
Mike? Dodgeville had a similar experience. They spent millions of dollars on a middle school over there. They were in it very few years. They redid the gym, they redid the entire school, they tore it down, and they built a new elementary school up by the high school. And they tore it down, and now there's a cap or something over there on the property that they had.
Isn't there a referendum going to build another gym for Dodgeville now too, like 5 years later? So now they're going back for another referendum to build a gym that they wanted to start with.
And that passed.
Right.
In an auditorium, yes.
I was just curious what the projected shelf life or life expectancy would be for a remodel here, or what we're getting for a shelf life versus 7 million and change, or 8, or whatever the difference is.
Yep. The new building obviously is going to be longer. It's probably a 50, 75-year kind of a building. And we just try to design it so it's flexible enough so that it can change over time, because 50, 75 years is a long time. Things change. So we try to design it so it's flexible enough we can change it internally, okay? This building, because it's still going to be an older structure, refurbished as best as possible, but it wouldn't be 50 to 75 years, I'm guessing.
That seems inaccurate with other information that I've heard, that the remodel here would be about 50 years.
Okay.
And
well,
then a new
you
school,
could probably get 50 out of it.
You're saying 50 to 75,
For a new,
for
yeah.
7 million and change.
Well, let's be honest, look at the schools
that
around
much
us.
more
Yeah.
longevity.
There isn't schools around us that are 110 years old and still functional.
You can get that too, it can be a 100-year-old building, really.
How old is it now?
There's the main entrance is a 60s. What you're sitting in is a 90s addition. And to your point, Alex, the last time there was a lot of snow on the ground, I was standing in my kitchen, and I thought, boy, the kids in this community would love me if we tore this down, because then they could start up by that fence.
Go all the way down.
They'd be down to 5th Street, through the old Savannah and everything. They would love all the sleigh riding that would happen here. Lisa?
Yeah, on the shelf life, I would just like to say, when we voted in November for 11.9, the deal was it was going to be a 50-year shelf life. So I would hope that if this referendum fails and you are still the architect, that you stand by that, because that's what we voted for. But I do have a question for you. I've seen some comments on Facebook that people think that the kids would be unsafe or something while the construction is going on. Can you please address that to say that they would be safe?
They'll be safe. I mean, we work very closely with the general contractor that gets the bid and make sure we literally have a lot of different sessions on how the construction is going to be phased, what it's going to take to keep those kids safe. Now, obviously, it's going to be harder, more challenging, and more expensive. Costs money to do that, to work within a construction area where there's kids costs the contractors more money to do that, because they have to phase how we can keep those kids safe, okay?
But
So
safety is not an issue for the kids. I mean, that's.
it's not an issue, but again, like I said, it's harder to make it safe when there's kids in the building. It's harder, but it's certainly
It's harder for the
doable.
contractors.
I'm sorry?
Harder for the contractors.
Definitely.
Yeah, it takes them twice as long to do something, so it costs
And just
more
wondering,
money.
if I had a daughter who was going into the 3rd grade and you were doing construction down here, she would still learn everything she needs to learn in 3rd grade, right? I mean, I know there'd be a little disruption here or there,
Oh,
maybe a jackhammer goes off or something, but the kids would still learn what they need to learn then.
The teachers aren't gonna stop teaching.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then I've also seen people say things like, there's gonna be mold here, and the thing with the foundation. For 11.92, there's not gonna be mold in this building, is there?
I don't think there's mold in here now,
Okay.
okay? And if it's refurbished, there won't be mold in it.
And the foundation will be strong and it'll be good for 50 years.
Yep.
And there's no
That's right.
asbestos here, right?
I don't know that.
Except
answer.
under, it's all, if there's any in the building, it's confined underneath a cabinet, like this cabinet's built. Otherwise, all the asbestos tile has been removed from the building, other than that location, any of those locations.
Couple quick little things. When we do a lot of addition remodeling work, and we generally find that 50s buildings, and even sometimes 60s, are better than, and last longer than 80s and 90s buildings, okay? And it's just the way it is. Things were built less expensively or cheaper in the 80s and 90s than they were back in the 50s.
And
or
cheaper now
60s.
than they were in the 60s, correct?
I'm sorry?
And cheaper materials now than we had
Cheaper
in the
materials, yep. For instance, brick versus split-face block, or, all those kinds of things. And then I'll address one of the other points and concerns about if the referendum passes, what happens to this building. We're working in Sparta School District, building a new elementary school, and they had 2 buildings. They had many different elementaries, and they wanted to bring all the kids kind of together for a lot of the same reasons you're thinking of. They had 2 buildings that they said before the referendum that they were going to repurpose. They didn't know how, but they were going to repurpose, whether they were going to be sold or whatever the case may be, get sold to somebody for a buck or whatever the case. We had one of the buildings is an older elementary school converted to, there's some administrative offices there. The other day we had a walkthrough there with some potential developers and contractors that the school district has an RFP out now for proposals that they want to receive from different companies to come in and repurpose that building. So they're going to probably sell that building based on, there was a lot of people at this meeting and walkthrough, so they'll probably get some reasonably good proposals and ideas on what can be done with that building, and then they'll probably just sell it to somebody like that. Or somebody had a nice idea here, maybe it just gets demolished and turn this whole block into a park. There's a lot of, the point being there is time is your ally here, okay? You don't have to make a hasty decision on what needs to be done with this building. You got a lot of time. You got 1.5 to 2 years to figure that out.
I'd feel a lot better about this new school if I knew what was going to happen to this one.
I'm sure.
And that's, I mean, every new or used, my uncle once said, being married or being pregnant, you have to pick which set of challenges you want to deal with. And it's the same with this. New or refurbished, they each have pluses, they each have minuses. I'm not concerned personally about paying a little extra tax. In fact, when I just moved back to town about a month ago, and was like, yes, I'm going to vote for the new school. And partially because I was concerned about some foundation issues, but I gathered more information and realized that the original referendum had plenty of contingency to cover that. And I also learned that we had done core samples not that many years ago and determined that the place was solid, that it was good. And I love our old buildings, but as many of you will know, I'm not gung-ho on restoration is great if you can afford it, but I'm practical. And I worry what's gonna happen to this building. I look at the high school that's for sale for $500,000 plus. It's already renovated partially, and from what I hear, not so good in other places. That's not even half a block away. How are we gonna sell two of these things? I'm worried about that.
And that's understandable. We're not trying to sell that.
I know you are, but it impacts this. You have that, an old school property that close for sale, that makes this less desirable if somebody is in the market for something like that. That's already been updated, is where I'm going.
If this, I'm just saying, that went through, and this as a possibility of being demolished, could you not use some of the things from this school to be put up in that school? Some of the
That would be,
Playground equipment?
that would be my suggestion.
Brad, do you ever reuse or repurpose materials?
Furniture, yes. Usually not mechanical equipment, because the mechanical equipment probably needs to be replaced here already.
things like walls, the brick, none of that could go?
Brick is tough
Come
to
down?
reuse because you have to clean it, and it's just a lot of extra work to do that. But I'm not saying, it's a good idea to explore. I would agree with you 100% there. We would look at every little possibility to reuse some of the materials, you know, whatever, playground equipment, who knows what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marker boards, you know, certainly some of the technology.
So the technology is not just being moved?
No, he said some of the technology could be.
Yeah.
Some of the.
Yeah, right?
Mhm.
The plan is to move what we can. Furniture's not getting replaced.
Some of
It's
it
usable,
will.
it's going. We're taking it with us.
If we were to bring that black fiber dark cable, whatever that's called, to the elementary school, if we were to do that, if we end up with this, can residents along the way tap into that? I'd sure like not to have to show charter.
We can work some,
Well, you might pay for it, is what I'm saying.
Yes, Nancy.
What was that final annual cost for internet here? We've seen all kinds of figures.
When I look at the charter bill
Uh-huh.
and pull out what the cost is for internet down here, if that is a standard cost for the year, it's a little over $9,000
Thank you.
For a year?
for the year.
I've been hearing like 50,000 a month and 9,000
I talked with Marcia. Marcia, we pulled out the charter bill. I looked at the charter bill. She looked at the charter bill separately. The charter bill itself is about $2,400 a month. But the portion just that they're charging us for the internet piece is $800 plus a month, $800 plus a month, so it's.
So that, because I've heard people saying that alone pays for this, that'd take a whole lot of millions of dollars to get $900,000 a year to even 1 million, let alone 7, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I know some people were wondering about the city. I'm an alderman, and I have a capital improvement plan in here, and the city is right now looking at right around $53 million in immediate repairs that need to be done with the city. Some of those are gonna be required. We're gonna start getting fined by the DNR if we don't get the water tower done by next year. Mr. Freeman's right, we had to cut Pine Street down to 1 block. We're doing 1 block because that's all we could afford. About 2 hours ago, we approved a new street department building because we're renting a building because one of ours is condemned. And about 2 weeks ago, I closed on a piece of land for the county, and that is just under $400,000, but that's going to be the new site for about a $30 million jail. I just want everybody to know that these are all gonna be costs that are gonna be passed on to every one of us, so however you vote, I don't care, but just so you know what's coming down the pipe from all the different taxing authorities, I know a little bit of it, at least from the city standpoint and the county.
You're gonna ask me, Mike, how we're gonna address all that, but this is not what we're doing. We're trying, all I can say. That's what all that's gonna be,
Good.
Again, thank you so much for coming.
I have just one more thing to say, if that's okay. I obviously have lots of questions and thoughts on this, and I guess I'm just curiosity, hypothetical, based on how things have happened in the last couple of months. We go to vote on the 2nd, and it passes, and there's less of a voter turnout than what there was in November. If enough people come to the school board and complain that their vote has now not been heard, is there any way that the school board decides to go with the November 2018 referendum that passed and not the new one? Because it seems like we made a decision, it was sent to the public, voted on, it passed, and some people cried wolf after the fact that they didn't know or they didn't get a chance to have their voice heard, and that's kind of what got us into this.
They've already passed a resolution that after April, if the new one goes, that's what goes. If it doesn't, then we'll relock. The resolution has been passed at the school board already.
Well, it was passed in November, so I'm just saying if enough people complain, if there is a yes vote and there's less of a voter turnout.
The question for a new school was not on that vote. You did not
No,
have an
I
opportunity to
understand
vote
that.
yes. Well, I think that's one of the issues, is that was
I'm
not
just
an
saying if there's
opportunity for
less of
people
a
to vote
voter
for.
turnout, because there was a very high percentage, 83, 87.
Then encourage voter turnout. I mean, that's all you
Right.
can do.
So, but because it was so high, if it's not as high this time, do you understand what
I
I'm
understand what
asking
you're
you?
asking, yes. And that would be a, come to a school board meeting and ask the school board that particular question. I can't
Don't
speak for
burden
the
them. They have
7
enough to
board
deal with.
members to say, yeah, if they heard enough that they would change their mind. The gentleman in the back spoke about the last conversations that the board had was if April is successful, it's new. If it's not, it's this one. So that was the position they took. Yes, Nancy?
Yeah, I was at the candidate forum last Thursday, and there was a question about when the next operations referendum may be, and the school board members who were there said probably 3 to 5 years. That was their best guess. Next operations referendum.
That's the answer I heard too.
How much was it, how much did it raise at the last fundraiser?
74 cents.
What?
74 cents. For 350,000, 74 cents.